Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Photo Mentor TV question and answers for photographers. Glad you could join us. If you're here live, that's great. We'd thrilled to have you here. If you're watching on the replay, that's terrific as well. Every Friday evening at 9 p.m. on Eastern Daylight Time, I guess at the Sunday it'll be Eastern Time again. We do this show to answer questions for new photographers, or any photographers really, but primarily new photographers. And the reason that a lot of people ask me, well, why are you doing this? What was the purpose? And the purpose is that just a lot of photographers have a lot of questions, especially new photographers. It's confusing. I often like to say it's easier to buy a car than it is a new camera. There's a lot of terminology that people don't understand. And a lot of times people don't get the answers in Facebook groups or forums or things like that. So I started this to be able to help and give back to the photographic community, and share the knowledge that I have as a photographer, and to helping new photographers, mentor them and kind of encourage them to stick with it and explore and learn and, basically enjoy photography even more. Let's see. So if you, we take live questions. If you have a question this evening, the best way to do it is probably to leave a comment in the Facebook group or on the YouTube channel, or on both, and that'll show up. If you put a Q and a colon in front of the question, then it'll show up here on my screen, and I'll be able to see your question and put it on the air and answer your question directly. If you're watching on the replay and you want to ask a question, you can do that as well. Just send an email to help@photomentor.tv, and I will either reply directly or we'll use that on next week's show. But appreciate you joining us either way. Again, my name is Lee Love, and I am a photographer, director, and educator, and have been doing this for more years than I want to admit, unfortunately. So let's see here. Whoops, get rid of that. I also wanted to tell you that on the first Friday of the month, I am doing a photo review. So I guess the next one would be on the 6th, I think it is, November 6th. And so if you would like to send in your photos and have them looked at and give you some feedback on them, I'll be happy to do that. Again, it's the way you do that is you can submit up to 3 photos per month, and they can be any kind of photos you want. The reviews will be anonymous. Nobody will know who you are. I'll use some initials or some letters and some numbers, and give you some feedback that way. So don't feel embarrassed if you're new, just got a new camera or something. Hey, that's great. We want to encourage you to keep shooting. And again, the idea here is to encourage you, not to discourage you. So feel free to submit any kind of photos that you may have. I'll look at the photos and see if how they work based on composition, if they work on, technically, and if there's some things you need to work on there. And I'll look at them as to see how they work subject matter wise, if you're conveying the message or the emotion or the subject that you are photographing. Again, that's going to be, we do that on the first Friday of the month. As I said before, this next one coming up will be November 6th, so that'll be next week. And if you would like to get instructions on how to submit your photo, just send an email to help@photomentor.tv. And I appreciate if in the subject you put the word review. That way it'll help me sort that out from all the other emails that I receive. So again, once a month, photo review. If you want to do that, that'd be great. Love to have you submit your photos and, see if we can encourage you and give you some information and some feedback to help you learn more about photography. Okay, let's see here. So I'm going to start the show a little differently this week. I wanted to highlight a master photographer, well-known photographer. His name is Alfred Eisenstadt. And he has a quote that I think is very appropriate to photography. And the quote is, "It's more important to click with people than it is to click the shutter." And why I think this is important is because one of the things I've learned in doing this as long as I have is that we're really in the people business or in the service business. We're not in the photography business. People don't come to us, especially, people that are purchasing our services, don't come to us to honestly for pretty pictures. I know that may be what we think that we're offering, and that may be what they're asking for, but they're really asking for something more than that. They're asking for service. They want images that make them look better and put them in a better light than they maybe would in a regular environment if they were taking the picture themselves. And so no matter whether some people say, well, I do landscape photography. Well, even if you're a landscape photographer or fine art photographer and you're going to be marketing your work, you still have to be in the people business. So I would encourage you when I talk to new photographers, one of the things that I like to reinforce is that don't worry about the technical stuff when you're first getting started. Worry about connecting emotionally with your client. A lot of people are doing newborns, or maybe they're doing families or weddings or portraits and things like that. Newborns, obviously, that's not the same issue, but you're still interfacing with the mother. And what you want to be able to do, though, is connect with the person in front of your lens and be able to draw something out of them, an emotion, an expression, a message. Make it interesting. You want people to be able to look at that photo and say, "Oh, wow, that's definitely Mary and Bob. That's so them." And so you do that by engaging people, talking to them, learning about them, taking a genuine interest in what that person's all about. I love working with people. It's my favorite kind of subject matter is photographing people. It's my expertise. And the reason is because I love meeting people, learning about what they do, and allowing them in. They allow me into their life for a short period of time. And I always feel, honestly, I come away with more than they did. So take a genuine interest in your subject and the person that you're working with, and your images will definitely improve. And you'll feel more comfortable as well, because you're really kind of making a friend in many cases, not just a client. So one of the things, if you're not familiar with Eisenstadt, he was a famous a photographer that was born in Germany, and he left Germany before World War II. And he came to the U.S. and worked for Life magazine. That's really where he became very, very well known. And of course, one of the images that his most iconic image is the sailor and the nurse, I believe, in Times Square. And so he just has been a phenomenal photographer, someone to look up to. If you haven't looked at his work, I encourage you to go back and look at the historical people that have come before you and the work they've done, to get inspiration and to, just to see what other people have done that's considered iconic in the industry. So anyway, Alfred Eisenstadt, amazing photographer, definitely someone that knew how to draw an emotion out of people, and as a photojournalist, capture that moment. So anyway, just wanted to start with that this evening, because I think it's overlooked. I think that I see a lot of people on a lot of forums and groups and stuff talking about the technology, but very few of them talking about the composition, the lighting, and the emotion of the subject, and drawing that emotion out, what it takes to draw that out. So it's the hardest thing to teach people, honestly. I can teach anybody the technical stuff. It's really easy, honestly, if you explain it properly and use it in terms that they're familiar with. But the hardest part is teaching people how to see and how to engage with other individuals. So anyway, just wanted to bring that up to this evening, and we'll start with that and see what you guys think about that. Okay. So again, if you if you want to ask a question, just put a Q in front of leave a comment in the Facebook page or on the YouTube page, and put a Q in front of it to show up here on my screen. And I'll be glad to do my best to answer the question. Okay, let's see what we got here. So, first, the question we have this evening is from Adrian. And Adrian says, I purchased my first camera. Any tips on taking the best photos? Wow, that's a big one, Adrian. That's a really, really big question. Well, I could be smart and say aim it in the right direction, but um, again, I think I'd go back to what I was talking about with Albert Eisenstadt, and that is engage your subject. What I tell people is this: if you're starting out, start by photographing something that you know, something you're familiar with. So let's say, for example, you're into biking or into running or basket weaving or whatever it may be. Maybe you're into rifles or whatever it may be. Find something else that you love to do or that you know something about and start photographing that subject first. The reason I suggest that is you're going to know more about it than other people will. You're already familiar with it. And so you're going to kind of know the insides of how that works. You're not going to be as nervous possibly. And I think in many cases, if you and I were to go side by side and photograph a subject that you've been doing for years and I've never done, my images may be composed differently or something like that, but you're going to know more about what to photograph and what's important to people that are involved in that aspect. So I would say the very first thing you need to do is don't worry about the technology. Start shooting on auto if you have to. There's nothing wrong with auto. Cameras are very sophisticated nowadays. And so I would say start doing that and then start looking at interesting subjects. And you probably won't know what you want to photograph right away. When I ask a new photographer, hey, what do you like to photograph? I always get the same answer. Well, I like to photograph everything. Well, that just means you haven't been shooting long enough to kind of figure out what you love doing, but that's okay. So you have to go through that process before you develop the kind of images that you want to start doing. So anyway, I would say the first thing is just photograph something that you know. It could be family members, it could be your dog, your cat, whatever, but something that you really love, and that will show through in your images. So start with that. Next question is from Robert. He says, what's the best and easiest steps to balance the ambient light and speed light flash with a Nikon D3300 and an SB800 flash? Okay, I'm very familiar with both those cameras and the SB800. I have a couple of those myself. So it's not complicated, but and there's a number of ways to do it. But let me kind of give you my process. Because I light everything I shoot, indoor, outdoor, it doesn't matter. Even stuff that you looked at my work and you said, wow, that looks pretty natural. It's not. It's lit. It's just that it's balanced with a 50-50 lighting ratio, just like Robert's asking. So there's just a little bit of light to fill in the shadows. So the way I do that, one way to do it, there's a number of ways to do it, but here's one way to do it. Put your camera on, let's say, aperture priority. And figure out what the depth of field you want to shoot at, maybe f8, 5.6, whatever. Take a picture. Then go and look at the back of the camera, and you play up that image back. You can look at the EXIF data, and it will tell you what the settings were when the camera was shot. So let's say it said f8, I said 5.6, but let's say 5.6 then at 2/50th or 1/25th of a second at ISO 100. Okay, great. Take those settings and go to manual. Dial in the exact same settings. f5.6, shutter speed of 125, ISO 100. The picture will look exactly the same as it did on auto. Nothing will change. But the reason you do this is because you don't want the exposure to change if you move the camera. All right, so now the next thing you do is you take your SB800, and ideally you want to have it on, off the camera. You can do it on the camera, but it's better if you have it off the camera. But off the camera, and I always like to start at about maybe 1/8 of a power. And the reason I do that, you go to manual on the flash, go to 1/8 power. And the reason I do that, that gives me room to go up and it gives me room to go down. I can power it up and power it down. If I start at 1:1, then there's no room to go. You're kind of already there. So do a test shot. Look at what the image looks like. If the person needs a little more light on them or the subject needs a little more light, then go to 1/4 power. And then if it needs more, 1/2 power. Now, keep in mind that the higher you go, if you go to 1:1 full power, it's going to take longer to recycle for the flash. So that's just something to be aware of. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to match the output of the flash to the output of the sun or the light that you're getting from the ambient light. The step I forgot to mention is, if you can, try and put your subject in the shade. If you're talking about a person, put them in the shade if possible, and that will then make a difference, and make it easier to overcome the sun. Because if you're in the middle of the day and you're trying to do this, you got to have a lot more flash power. SB800s may not have, it's a pretty powerful flash, but it may not have enough to overpower the sun. But if you put them in the shade, you can do that. So again, let me just kind of review. Put the camera on aperture or shutter priority. It doesn't matter. Take a shot. Look at what the camera says the image is supposed to be. Go to manual, dial in those same settings. Turn the flash on then. Don't have it on before then. And then set it up so that when you trigger the camera, and I could go into how you do that, but it's kind of involved. And then you want to just start at 1/8 of a power, start going up from there if you need to, or down from there to dial the flash. You want the flash in manual as well. And then that will give you the ability to balance a 50-50 lighting ratio is what you're really trying to do. Now, if I were doing this, I'd have a light meter. I'd do a meter reading on external light meter. I'd do a meter reading on the sunlight or the ambient light. Then I'd look at what that is, and then I could dial in the same settings on the flash and the camera and get pretty close. But if I didn't have a light meter with me, I'd do it exactly like I described it before. Now, I'm going to make a note here, because when we get another question we got from somebody about flash sync, it's going to come up. I'm going to remind you this would apply for this question as well. So anyway, we'll keep going. All right. So Lauren asked if so can anyone suggest the best material for backdrops that don't crease? Lauren, I like paper. You can get a 39-inch, 53-inch roll. It's 53 inches wide. It's about 4.5 feet, 5 feet. For a single headshot, or you can get a 107-inch roll. That's for doing a group stuff. They run roughly, check your prices, but run about $39 for the 53-inch and about $69 for the 107-inch. But I keep a couple of those in my car, black, white, and gray maybe. And the reason I like them is because I can roll it out. They don't crease. If it gets dirty, I just take my knife, cut off the bottom of it, throw it away, and just roll out some more. The other thing you can do about it with it is that if you don't have to carry a light background if you don't want, you can, instead of putting it up on a stand and unrolling it, what you can do is the opposite. Lay it on the ground and unroll it and just gaffer tape it to the wall or something. And that way you don't need a stand if you have a wall to be able to shoot against. So sometimes that can be a little easier if you're trying to save space and not carry a bunch of gear with you. So hope that helps. Let's see here. Again, if you have a question, be sure and leave a comment in the Facebook comment page or in the YouTube group, YouTube page, and we'll get to that and try and answer a question. Okay, so let's see here. So Megan asks, testing out a speed. Here's our question here. Okay, this is back to what Robert was asking and related, in other words. Testing out a speed light I got off of eBay, and the pictures are great, except it's leaving a black line underneath my pictures. So what she's talking about is a problem with the sync speed. So if you look at this picture right here, this is her picture, and this is what she's talking about. If you look across the bottom, there's a line. It's just it's black there across the bottom. Sometimes at the top, depending on the camera. What's happening here is the shutter speed is too high, and so the flash can't keep up with the shutter. So on the Nikon, generally it's generally the highest speed on the Nikon's about 1/250th. Sometimes it's 1/200th, depending on the model, but generally it's 1/250th. On a Canon, it's about 1/60th of a shutter speed of a second. But what will happen is if your flash is not set up to sync, especially a manual flash, then you'll get this black bar. This would also apply if you're using studio strobes. So if you're renting a studio or you have a studio and you have manual strobes, which normally you don't need anything fancier than that in a studio, then what will happen is you'll get this black bar across the bottom because it's not synced properly. So how do you solve that? The way you solve that is you go below the 160 or 200th of a second, or this is something people say, what kind of flash should I get? You want to look for a flash that has TTL through the lens metering or through the lens connectivity or protocol. On the Canon, I believe it's called ITTL, and on Nikon, it's called TTL. And what that does is that allows the camera to talk to the flash. And it does, and so if you go above the 2/50th of a second, now it doesn't do it on all camera models. The 3300, I think, which Robert had, and also I think the model that Lauren had here. Let's see, what did she have? She had the, or Megan, I guess it is. Megan has she didn't say which camera she had. It's a Nikon though. So, but the lower, I think anything below a 3500 and below, the 7000 series and above, I believe, has this, but it has what's called high-speed sync. So what happens is the camera will sync above the 250th of a second. Now, but you got to have a flash that supports high-speed sync and TTL. I believe, though, nowadays, it used to be you had to have TTL. I think nowadays some of the flashes support high-speed sync that don't have TTL. I don't know why they would have that, but anyway. But you want a flash that has high-speed sync. Now, when the flash is on the camera, it's not a problem. It will automatically do that syncing. But when you have it off the camera, you need to be able to trigger it and be able to send commands to the flash. And typically that's a radio system that does that. Again, we could get more complicated. I don't want to spend, I could spend all night just telling you about flash and TTL and radio systems. Maybe we should do a show on that one week. But the point is, you want a flash that's TTL and high-speed sync, and you want to be able to trigger it some way, and you want to make sure it's compatible with your Nikon, Canon, or Sony. A lot of them, they usually tell you whether they are compatible or not. So that's one of the reasons that will drive the price up, by the way. So she got a flash off eBay, probably didn't pay much for it, and it's probably just a manual flash, which is fine. You can do manual flash, but again, back to Robert's situation, if you knew you were using a manual flash, then you wouldn't shoot on aperture priority. You start on shutter priority. And the reason is because you know you can't go over 1/60th of a second or 200th of a second or 2/50th of a second. So you would put the camera on shutter priority on 200th of a second and then let the camera pick the aperture, because the aperture is not going to be as important in this case. The shutter is, because if the shutter's too high, you're going to get that black bar. Make sense? I hope so. I hope I'm not making this too complicated. So then you do the same thing though. Shutter priority, take a picture, look at the back of the camera, find out what the EXIF data is, put it on manual, turn the flash on. If you do that, you can use any flash. Megan could use this flash no problem. So anyway, I know it's kind of confusing, but let me tell you. Once you learn how this works, it will change your photography. I love flash photography. Like I said, I light everything I shoot. I could show you some pictures of stuff that you'd never even think were lit. Lifestyle kind of photos. But the reason is it gives me complete control. I don't have to worry about going to a situation and worry about it being foggy or rainy or light or dark or whatever. I can control the light completely. So anyway. That's the deal on that. Okay, so Alyssa says, does anyone else feel obligated to give friends and family discounts or do free sessions for free? Yes. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. You've never heard anyone say, wow, that's a nice camera. Why don't you come to the party over here we're having and take some pictures? I mean, that's, we all know that that's not any fun because we're not enjoying the party or the event or whatever, because we have our nice camera with us and we're working. I mean, when you're taking photos, when you're shooting, you're working, you're actively looking for photos. images, motions, emotions, things like that. And so you're not able to enjoy the event. But yes, it does happen. Now, here's the counter to that. Instead of being sour about it, think of it as an opportunity. When it happens to me, not very often, but when it happens to me, I've done stuff for our church and other different things like that. And I look at it as this is a free studio. This is a model. If your friend says, hey, can you take some pictures for us, or your family, think of it as like, hey, these are models I'm going to get to photograph, and I can do whatever I want. They're going to be happy with whatever I want. So think about what you kind of photos you'd want to take. Come up with a concept. Shoot something. If they want something basic, then shoot something basic. But then say, hey, can we come over here? Would you guys mind if we try this or try that? And let them know. Have a couple of concepts, something that you're shooting for yourself is the way I describe it. So you're going to get them some images. You're going to shoot stuff for them. But then you're also going to come away with some photos, some images that you wanted just for yourself. I do this all the time, even on a commercial shoot. If we have time, I'll shoot something for the client, and then I'll have a couple of ideas. Say, let's try this, let's try that. And if they're up for it, we have enough time, the budget allows it, we'll try a few things. And many times those come out better than the original ideas that we started with. So use it as an opportunity to explore and to explore your photography, create your creativity, try some different things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but at least you have some people to work with, and if they're friends or family, then you're going to be comfortable with them. And so that goes back to the Alfred Eisenstadt comment about being able to click with people. So, I would say don't worry about it. Just use it as an opportunity. Don't be sour about it. And so, again, if it's a different thing if if people are asking you for free work and it's friends of friends or something like that, and stuff that you would normally charge for. So, you got to judge what you want to do, what stuff you want to do for free or for a discount. That's up to you. But don't, I'm saying that if there is an opportunity and you have somebody to work with that will kind of come up with a cool concept or willing to play a little bit and try some different ideas, go for it. All right. So, let's see here. So John says, how do you come up with your pricing? Do you have a breakdown, like your office, manpower, gas, food, and hours of editing? How many percent is your profit? Okay, so what percentage is your profit? So John, that's again a kind of a complicated question. I'll try and do the best I can. I mean, I could spend a lot. I do a lot of work with new photographers and consulting and helping them understand how to structure their business. So I'll try and touch on some of this stuff. First of all, you have to know what your cost is, roughly. So you're not going to charge off all your cost on one photo shoot, of course, but you need to know what your cell phone's going to cost, what your internet service is costing, what your computer is costing, what your software is costing, updates to your software, storage. Now, disk storage has gotten less expensive, but it still costs. I mean, I have 3 levels of storage. I have my local hard drive, which is 2 drives. I won't go into too much detail here, but it's mirrored, meaning it has a backup right there. Then I have another system on the network. It's got about 48 terabytes of storage. That's backed up. So the local photos are backed up onto that system, and then that system is backed up onto a cloud service. So that costs money, and you got to be able to pay for that, because if you don't, and you lose your photos, and your clients are going to be ticked off. All that stuff costs. But the one point you mentioned here that a lot of people don't do, and that's the hours of editing. Before I get into that, your education is another important. Courses, even if it's just hours on YouTube or watching videos or listening or attending courses or whatever, that's all part of your education. That comes underneath that comes under marketing and education, under your bookkeeping status, and you need to expense that, and you need to be able to charge for it, or at least know what those expenses are. But so when it comes to editing, I'll just tell you the way I do it, and it's different for everybody else. So when I talk to a client, I'm not saying this is the right way to do it, I'm just saying the way I do it. When I talk to a client, I'm looking for the scope of work. So in other words, I want to know, I kind of have an idea of what I need to charge, of course, that's in the back of my mind. But I'm trying to see if there's anything unusual or something that would change that. So if they come to you and say, yeah, hey, we've got this, we want to hire you to do this shoot. We're going to, it's an anniversary, or maybe it's a wedding, or just be senior portraits. And we want to do this, and we want to do a train station or something. Okay, great. Is that going to be the only location we're going to use? Oh, well, we also want to go over to this other location and do some here, and then maybe the football field, blah, blah, blah. So every time you have to move and go to a different location, that's a different setup. That's almost like doing a completely different shoot, especially if you're using lighting. And so therefore there's a lot, I take that into account. The next question I ask is, well, how many images are you expecting to get? That sometimes people that aren't used to that, and that are consumers are not used to that. They may go, what do you mean? I want all of them. Well, no, you can't get all of them, because first of all, one of them may be like this, and one of them may have their head turned just a hair different. It doesn't make sense to get both of those. Plus, you're the lab. You're going to have to go through every image. You're going to have to edit it. You're going to have to call them out, take out the ones that aren't worth distributing. And then you're going to have to touch up or process the ones, even the proof sheets, just basically before you get them to them. So what I want to know is, how many final images are they going to want? If they say 20, okay, that's going to go into my pricing, because I need to know, okay, at 20 images, let's say I'm really good. It's going to take me half an hour, but probably an hour per image to average out. Some of them are going to 5 minutes, some are going to be at 45 minutes. Average that out, what your editing time is. $45 an hour, $75 an hour. That's not unreasonable. A real retoucher can easily charge $125, $150 or more an hour. So that's not unreasonable. So you're really doing lab work is what you're doing. In the old days, we used to take film, take it to the lab, they process it, they print it, they color correct it, you get prints back. That costs money. That's now the same job you're doing, except more extensive, actually. So if you don't do that, what happens is the client then goes, oh, wow, this is great. Hey, listen, can you take this picture here, and can you take my head off of this picture and put it to this picture over here? Yeah, I can, but it's going to cost $75 an hour to do that. So you need to be able to let them know what it's going to be for the number of images that they want, because there is a lot of work involved. There's software costs and storage costs and all that kind of stuff. So don't be afraid to do that. And here's what I've discovered. It actually helps the client. The client prefers this, and here's why. It puts them in control of the budget. So I'll give you a quick story. I got a bunch of these stories, but here's one. I had a client one time who wanted me to go do some photos. 3 headshots is all they wanted. And they wanted like $200, and I was like, I just can't do it for $200. And it happened to be a friend of mine. He's an editor of a magazine, or photo editor, and he gives me a lot of work. And he's like, hey, look, can you do this for me? I said, look, I can do it for $400. And they said, okay, great. So I went down, I did this shoot for $400, set up in a conference room, did the headshots. But they had a really nice atrium and a foyer and stuff out there. So I said, hey, look, why don't we go ahead and take some pictures? I had my studio, battery-powered studio lights. I went out and did some nice shots there with the atrium, down the hallway, some just kind of creative stuff. Back to what I was saying before, if they don't want them, those are pictures for me even. So I could walk away with some pictures that I could use for my portfolio, or something I could try creative. They were willing to try it, so why not? When they got the proofs, they said, oh, man, we love these. We want this. They picked like 21 pictures. I said, whoa. I'm sorry. The $400 was just for the 3 headshots. Now, I can do these other pictures, but I have to post-process them. And let's say, I don't remember what the price was. Let's say it was $45 per picture. And they're like, oh, okay, that's kind of too much. I tell you what, though, we want these 7 or 10 or whatever it may be. So what the point here is, they looked at that and they felt that work was beyond what they were expecting. They were willing to pay for it because I went above and beyond, and it was value. They were in control of the budget. I didn't give them some lump $750 price for all the pictures. I let them pick. If they want 1 picture, great. If they want 20 pictures, that's up to them. They can control the budget, and people really like that. And so I did a bunch of retouching on them. One guy's tie was crooked. I didn't notice it at the time, and they really liked the picture. And they wrote me back and said, hey, you think you could straighten that guy's tie? And I said, yeah, I could. Actually, I was going to do that, but I didn't know if you had the budget because I know you guys said you were tight. And I said, no. I said, how much it's going to be? I forgot it. Let's say it's $75. It doesn't matter. They said, okay, yeah, we want to do it. So I did it. So the job turned out, I think, about $750. So the point I'm trying to make here is they were in control of the budget. They decided how much money they want to spend. And it really was better for them because maybe they only wanted to spend $200 at first, but when they saw your work, it was worth more to them. And so let them decide. Here, the analogy I use is like you go into a restaurant, right? You're going in for a nice meal. You get the prime rib. You want the asparagus, stuffed mushrooms, Caesar salad, a glass of wine, house wine, of course, probably, and maybe dessert. Well, then you look at you start looking at adding it up in your head. And you go, ooh, that's going to cost like $150 per meal. Okay, I tell you what. Maybe we don't need the asparagus, maybe we don't need the mushrooms. Maybe we don't need the dessert. That'd be fine. So the point is, you're controlling the budget. You're saying, okay, hey, this is what it's worth to me. It's what it's not worth to me. If you give your client that same choice, it will be better for them and they will appreciate it. I always break out my pricing for my client. I never give them a bundle price. I give them what my fee is going to be, what the retouching fee is going to be, delivery of the images, all that stuff is broken out so they can see exactly what they're paying for. Anyway, I didn't mean to go through all that, and I know that's probably a lot more than you were expecting, but it is important, and it means it's important to understand how to do your pricing to stay profitable, because if you don't, you're going to go out of business. You're doing this because you love doing it. And if you're not making a living at it, then you might as well be working at McDonald's or somewhere else, because what happens is you're shooting, you're spending a week doing editing, and when you end it up, you're making $4.50 an hour, which is not why you got into this business to begin with. So, okay. Again, I want to let me remind you that, as I said earlier when we started, once a month now I'm doing a photo review. It's the first Friday of the month on the show we do here. The next one will be on November 6th. You can submit up to 3 images per review. The reviews will be anonymous, so no one will know who you are, and if so, don't you have to be embarrassed or anything like that. As I said before, I want to encourage you, not discourage you. And so it doesn't matter if you're a new photographer or not. Just submit the stuff you want some feedback on. I'll look at it, see if the images, how well they work based on the composition. Technically, I'll see, how well they work, and the subject matter. Does the subject come through? Is it really emotional, or does what you're trying to do really come through the images that you've taken? And again, if you want to submit some photos, I don't have it automated right now, so just send an email to help@photomentor.tv with the subject matter being review, and I will email you back some instructions on how to submit those photos. So again, if you want to do that, if you want to get your pictures looked at and get some feedback on them, I'm happy to do that. Okay, let's see what else we got here. All right, so the next question is from Brittany, and Brittany has a long one here. It says, I just started doing paid shoots for minis now, meaning like mini shoots. I'm doing this part-time as I have a full-time job. I love photography, so if the photos take off, that would be great, but it's not essential. Anyway, my question is, at what point do you get your business license and insurance? I would say right away. If you are doing this and you're charging, then you want it. And look, let me back up. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. I don't even play one on the internet. Okay, so check with somebody that knows this stuff. But I'll give you my advice based on my experience, and you then take that with a huge grain of salt and talk to somebody that actually does this for a living. But I would suggest that you, at a minimum, get your business license. It doesn't cost very much usually. You can get a federal tax ID number and get a bank account and a business bank account. And so you want to put any of your revenue or anything into that bank account. You want to pay your expenses out of that bank account so that it allows you to keep track of them. Now, one thing you can do is, because you're getting started, maybe you don't have a lot, maybe you're not making a lot of money, maybe you need to buy a camera or lens or something, or rent something. What you can do, and again, check with your accountant, but you can take and transfer money from your personal account into the business, and then that can be handled as a loan to the business. And then when the companies and the business starts making money, you can pay it back. But it comes in as a loan, I believe, to the business. Insurance is kind of an interesting one. It depends on the kind of work you're doing. I would say definitely want theft insurance. Now the way it works is that if you are making money at this and your insurance company finds out, your homeowner's insurance, they will not cover if your stuff's stolen. So you need to get a separate policy to cover the equipment, and cover it while it's in your car, and cover it while it's in the chute. So if something gets left behind or stolen, then you're covered there. Now, most of the other kind of insurance is okay, but as you get more and more kind of higher end work, what happens is, like, I have to carry a multi-million-dollar liability policy because I'm doing commercial work, advertising, magazine work, stuff like that, corporate. So I have to be insured. They won't even let me on the site, or they won't even book me until I show proof of that insurance. Because if a light stand falls through a window or onto a car or something that I'm photographing, then that could be detrimental. So you need to have liability insurance, but you probably don't need that right away, I wouldn't think, until you get a little more sophisticated, depending on the kind of work you're going to be doing. I hope that helps. But it's the one other thing I'll tell you, Brittany, is, and this is not meant to discourage you at all. It's just meant to kind of give you a little bit of perspective. One of the things I've noticed or learned about photography business is that it's 80% business and 20% photography, unfortunately. I don't shoot nearly as much as I did. Well, I've been doing this a long time. But when you start off, you're not shooting it. You do it because you love it. You're passionate about it. You love photography. You want to just do that all the time. And what a great job to be able to do this for a living. The problem is that you're going to find there's a lot more business involved than it's 80% business, 20% photography, because you've got taxes to deal with. You've got contracts. You got delivering images. You got editing, all this stuff has to do with shooting. You got to market your business, even on Facebook or YouTube, or not YouTube, but on a website or something like that. So you're always marketing the business. So unfortunately, it takes away from a little of the joy of doing the shooting. So here's the way you get around that. Every established photographer that I know does this. And that is, you have to have a personal set of I have a list of personal projects that I'm working on at any given time. And so what that is like something that I want to shoot just for me. It's a concept, maybe I've hired a model, makeup artist, and I want to work on a project. I have an idea. Maybe I want to try a new technique, or some kind of lighting technique, or new lens or something. I have something in my head. And that's where you get the joy. That's what the client work funds the personal work. And the personal work is really where you get to exercise your passion. And not to get off topic, but that's what bothers me when people are doing these shoots for $20 or $50 or $100 even. If you're going to be doing a shoot for that little money, and you're going to be making that little amount of money, why not do your own shoot? In other words, for $20, $50, you could hire a model and go out somewhere and do your own project, your own concept, your own shoot. Why, so it doesn't make sense to be doing that for a client that's not going to pay enough, that's going to be demanding and want to know when they're going to get the pictures delivered and how many pictures are they going to get. If you're not making any money, then why aren't you just doing your own personal work? And your personal work is the stuff that you show in your portfolio, and people will notice that. I can't tell you how many portfolio reviews I've been through, or art producer or art director will be looking through my book and say, wow, tell me about this picture right here. And inevitably, it'll be one of the images that I came up with and something that I shot for myself. They see it. It comes through in that. And they can tell that it's not, a shoot for Audi. They can look at that, see Audi. Okay, great, you do work for Audi. They know I'm working under an ad agency or an art director, and I'm shooting at what they want. But when they look at something that's personal work, they know that came from up here. And that's really what you want. You want them to hire you for your vision, not what the art director or art producer was asking for. So anyway, don't mean to go off on that, but it's really important to shoot personal work. Always be having personal work in mind, and shoot stuff you want to get hired to do. Now, I'm not talking about if you're I'm not talking about putting landscape photography in your portfolio if you're a wedding photographer or portraits. What I'm saying though is if you want to do portraits, shoot personal ideas and concepts for portraits. Put that in your portfolio. People will see that and go, wow, I love what you did with that. Can you do that for me? That's ideally what you want, because you shot it for yourself for free, right? You love doing it. If someone wants to pay you, that's terrific. Anyway, if you have questions about this, Brittany, or anybody on this kind of stuff, send me an email, help@, photomentor.tv, or leave it a comment here or something. I'll be happy to get on and do a video call or whatever and talk to you more about this. But it's very important that if you're going to do this for a living, that these are the kind of things that you understand. All right. Let's see if we got much time. All right. So, Haley asks, what's the best way to promote and get experience? By the way, if you haven't noticed, this is a business theme we've got going on tonight here. What's the best way to promote yourself and get experience? I'm just starting out, want to shoot weddings and engagement shoots. It goes a lot in the same way that I just mentioned before. If you, first of all, you need to get a body of work. Now, your portfolio does not have to be huge. But just have your best stuff. So if you don't need 100 pictures on there, you almost don't even need 20. You just need, as many as you can put on there, but you want them to be the best the best of the best. The other thing is, I know you were asking this, I think, on Facebook. So you want to make sure you have your own website. And the reason is, you don't own Facebook. Facebook could change their policy. You could do something, say something, make somebody mad. Who knows? Someone would come get a grudge against you, file a complaint, and all of a sudden take down your site. So you want to have your own website under your own name, your own domain, so that you control. And that's where you want to put your work. Now, if you want to cross-post that work to Facebook or other platforms, that's fine. But you want to try and drive people to your own website, which you control, and you can put what's up there, and it's not going to go away. Nobody's going to take it down. And then the other thing is, if you want to start doing weddings and engagements, then I would say check with some friends, find out what's going on, but mainly see if you can work as a second shooter. Find somebody that's willing to mentor you and kind of let you tag along. Sometimes somebody's looking for a second shooter. They've got a stressful wedding or something like that. If you're a second shooter, typically does what's called detail work. So you'll shoot the rings, the cake, all that kind of stuff. While the main photographer is making sure they get the shots that have to get there, the kiss, the bride, all that kind of stuff. Then you can be off shooting some of the other stuff that maybe kind of what's called color, or just random pictures that may be interesting to the family. So that's always a good way to do something like that. And again, I'd go back to what I said earlier on. Find something you love to shoot if it fits the kind of stuff you want to get hired to do, that is. And, you can always hire people. I know it's expensive sometimes, but you can hire a model, get a wedding dress or something like that, or an engagement, hire a couple models to do wedding, engagement shoot. That way you have control over it. You can set it up exactly the way you want. They're working for you. Takes as much time or as little time as you want. But if not, looking to friends and family. So anyway. All right. I think that's about it for this week. I hope that's answered most of your questions. I enjoyed talking to you guys as usual, helping you out. I kind of went off on some of the topics a little longer than normal. I apologize. But as you can tell, I also am passionate about some of these things. Lighting, especially business of photography. Been doing this a long time, and so I've made all the mistakes to be made, and I've spent thousands of dollars hiring consultants and things like that, and people to help me with my marketing and editing my portfolio and stuff like that. So I'm not saying it's great. In fact, my portfolio needs re-edited right now, but the point is I've learned a lot from that, and I've listened, and I'm happy to share that information with you. Take it with a grain of salt. If it works for you, great. If not, no big deal. But I think you'll find that most everything I tell you is from the heart and stuff that I've experienced and is based in the real world, not, stuff you read in books or, well, not that that's not real world. But anyway, I just read a lot of stuff online. It's like, really? That's not true. So anyway, again, I appreciate everybody's being here tonight. And again, I want to check. We'll do this every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Eastern. And I guess if you're in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Western, I guess that would be Pacific time. And if you're in other parts of the world, that would be 0100, what is it? It's 0100, can't think of Universal Coordinated Time. That's what it is. Sorry about that. So anyway, thanks again, and thanks for joining me, and look forward to seeing you next week.